guess I'll talk a little bit about the kerfuffle I had with Breadtube. And like I said earlier, I think I said this in the pre-show. Breadtube is not my enemy. Like, I don't consider myself a part of Breadtube at all, because like I don't involve myself in communities like that anymore. Because to me, they just turn into cliques that I don't want to be involved in. It just gets annoying, right? But like, they're mostly on my side. I mostly, don't have a problem with them. But like, I spend 99% of my time shitting on conservatives and Republicans. So occasionally, it's fun to like shit on your own side a little bit, call out what you perceive as hypocrisy a little bit. Um, and I did call out what I perceived as hypocrisy. I no longer feel that what I said was true. Um, Basically, I called them out because they claim to be really in support of fighting back against class struggle and wealth inequality, helping the poor and whatnot. At least that's what I thought Breadtube was about. And so I was kind of making fun of them that even though they claim to want to eat the rich, they funnel so much of their money to a very few top content creators, people who are making way more than they need to comfortably live, which is exasperating the class problems, right, and class struggle. Instead of funneling that money to poor content creators and spreading that money around, I think that it's more of a moral position to, instead of paying someone who is very comfortable, who's making way more than they need to comfortably live on, you should filter that money to, the lower classes in order to, balance out the class inequality a bit, especially a group that seems like that would be part of their priority. But it turns out that's not really something Breadtube is concerned with. I talked to several of them, like American Johnson, I think's his name, and they're basically like, nah, man, we don't care if lefties are rich. Like, you could be rich as a lefty. We don't care even if our main content creators make millions of years, make more than professional football players. The only thing we care about is that you don't get your money by exploiting labor. And I don't agree with that. I'm going to explain why I don't agree with that. But and I posted, damn, I knew I was a dirty commie. But I just learned that I am to the left of Breadtube. And a lot of people are saying you're not to the left of Dusty. The position of believing that people who live very, very comfortably should donate their excess to poor people to help alleviate class struggle and wealth inequality is not really a position we hold at Breadtube. We don't give a shit if people are rich, like I said, as long as they don't make their money by exploiting labor. So anyway, I actually think this is immoral to become rich in a society with so much wealth inequality but it seems like most of Breadtube disagrees. Interesting. And like, I got shit on so hard for my opinion. Like, 2 or 3 days of people just calling me retarded. And I'm only saying that word retarded because that's what they called me. That's not something I would use to call anybody else because it's ableist, right? And insinuating that I'm a hypocrite and something's wrong with me for my beliefs. And it wasn't everybody who was commenting to me that was being mean, obviously. There were plenty of people out there who were trying to engage me in good faith and give their opinions and whatnot. But like, every time I would talk to somebody, I would try to comment to somebody who was engaging me in good faith, it would be jumped on by mobs of people calling me names and shit. And man, at first I was like, this really hurts my feelings. Why are all these people being so mean to me? And then I thought to myself, oh yeah, it's because you're talking mad shit to everybody. What the fuck do you expect, dude? It's exactly what's gonna happen when you talk mad shit to people. They're gonna fucking jump on you, right? And, people vehemently disagree with me, and oftentimes when people disagree with you on Twitter, they're not gonna disagree politely. They're gonna call you names. So, like, I just logged out of Twitter and try to make jokes about it and whatnot. It's really not that big of a deal. Like, ultimately, nobody gives a shit, right? It has no effect on my life, really, and they'll get over it. And if they don't get over it, who gives a shit, right? No big deal. Definitely not going to kill myself over it or worry about it too much. But I'm going to try to explain my position a little better on why I think it is immoral for people to earn much more money than they comfortably need to live. I didn't pull up the fucking study, but people are like, well, what do you think is comfortable, Dusty? And I think I'm being totally fucking reasonable here. They've done studies to show what most Americans need to live comfortably. And over that amount, the studies show doesn't seem to provide very much happiness. And that amount is somewhere between $70,000 to $95,000. So I'm like, okay, well, how about $100,000? That seems like $100,000 after expenses seems like plenty for anybody to live comfortably. And I think it's moral in a society with so much fucking poverty, with so much suffering going on out there, that you have a moral imperative to share your surplus with those who are needy, right? I don't see how this is a very controversial position, but it was. In Breadtube, it seems like me saying this was a controversial position. I think you have what I call a personal responsibility to share your excess with the poor. And I think a good illustration of that is what was said by, I guess, Felix Biederman. Like, I'm not real familiar with Chapo Trap House, but apparently this guy is from Chapo Trap House. And he had an interesting take on it, and I thought I would play his take for you guys. Here we go. Load, motherfucker. Do it. You can do it. Load.
Right.
But, and also, like, I think that money does have this entrancing power to people that's very real. I feel like people come into like 7-8 figure sums and it completely rewires their brain, because so much of most people's lives is like, am I going to have enough money to do this? Am I going to have money? Then you get to the point where it's like, I don't have to think about those things anymore. And that's what they call, that's like the $80,000 threshold for like a single person, where you don't have to worry about the things that you did. And then you go higher and higher. And unless you have like a break where you're like, okay, it's like kind of absurd. If I don't have kids, if I don't have a wife, if my family doesn't need this, it's absurd for me to keep all this. I should give a lot of this away.
Right.
You spend more time rationalizing why you should have it. And it makes you disconnect from people. Because for people that are like extremely into the logical vision of the world, there is nothing logical about someone having, fucking $50 million.
Well,
it's
that's
it's
like
fucking obscene.
Now you're talking about fucking communism, dude.
But that's the thing. It's like, if you listen to him talk like a few years ago, like he's like,
no, he would
very
say
reasonable. But it's money.
Fucked up.
Money
Like,
makes
that guy
you
shovels
crazy.
Ditches. Like,
He's
he
talking
should
about
make
Joe
fucking
Rogan,
money.
Yeah, money makes you fucking crazy, because you either separate yourself like past a certain point, or you spend more and more time rationalizing why you should have it. And the only way you can rationalize why you should have it is both that everyone and everything in the world is like an existential problem, and that you are so much better than everyone.
So there was a piece that came out. Oh man, it's a while ago now, but it was like the economic part of like it was by the same guy who actually wrote Emotional Intelligence, and he was saying, he's like, it's actually studied that even on like a really basic level, that all of these social interactions that humans need to cultivate in themselves, if they're anywhere on the spectrum from, seriously economically deprived, like I was growing up, or even just like middle class, you have like a situation where, oh shit, I need to stay later at work. My neighbor needs to my kid needs to go over to my neighbor's house and like play with their kids and whatever. So you need to have like a relationship with your neighbor, not just like out of self-interest.
Right.
You just literally need to constantly be relating to other people,
Right.
because you live in a socially embedded way. And then when money cancels all of that, they were doing the research in the piece was like literally like down to the level of like, you don't need to read other people's facial expressions in the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to cue into like any type of proper protocol for being human, because you can just fucking bypass all of it.
And he's absolutely right here. There's lots of problems with the class system. The problem with Breadtube, a lot of people are talking about, they look at the class system only through the 160-year-old Marxist viewpoint, and they even reduce it to where there's only really two classes, right? You're either the bourgeoisie or the proletariat. You're either somebody that makes their money by exploiting labor, or you're not. And in their model of class, somebody that makes $10 million a year, as long as they didn't exploit labor, is in the same exact class as a homeless person, which is insane, right? But there are so many, I should have pulled this up earlier, but there are so many more modern models of class system in America. What did I type? Class system in America. Yeah, social class of the United States. In the 160 years since Marxist ideas came out, sociologists have created much more modern models based off economic data we have now, and there's a bunch of them. I'll show you a few of my favorites here. Let's scroll down. Here we go. Like Dennis Gilbert's is one of the most popular one, the Gilbert model. There's, I think, 6 or 7 different classes. The capitalist class, the top 1%, which is it's like $400,000 a year, and there are a couple Breadtube celebrities, the people at the top, who do appear to be making an annual income that puts them in the top 1%. So it's the capitalist class, and the upper middle class, highly educated, often with graduate degrees, most commonly salaried. And this is another model, the William Thompson Joseph Hickey model. It says $100,000 for this particular class. There's 15%, and a lot of people, especially in Breadtube, they think that it's only right to call out the super rich, the billionaire class. But then there's another subset of people, like myself, who thinks the upper middle class is also a large part of the problem that should also be encouraged and critiqued into giving more of their money away, because there's a huge amount of money caught up in the upper middle class. There's a huge amount of money, obviously, in the billionaire class, but then there's a huge percentage of it in the upper middle class, and there's way more upper middle class people than there are billionaires, right? And so as far as the class dynamics work, in a way, the upper middle class, since they make up more of that class, they exacerbate that in certain ways even more than billionaire class. So they deserve critiques, in my opinion. And then there's the lower middle class, the working class, the working poor, and the underclass. So there's lots of other different class models other than the Marxist class models, and they're more modern. And so when I was talking about class and how money puts you in a different class, and people were like, "No, Dusty, there's only 2 classes. You can be a millionaire and still be in the same class as the really, really poor." And I'm like, no, not really, not according to the modern model. So, like, I support, especially people who claim that they're more interested in tackling these class problems, to lead by example and to encourage other people that are on their side to donate more of their surplus. And so that's basically the whole point I was making. And I read an interesting article that basically sums up pretty much everything I was trying to talk about. This is from Current Affairs from 6 years ago, from actually 2 years ago, not 3 years ago now. I won't read the whole thing, but anyway, I guess I won't go into the whole thing. But basically, it's about how it's immoral to have a certain amount of money, and how that, like, all sides, even the socialists, seem to be fighting against the idea that we should encourage the wealthy to donate more of their money and their more resources, due to, like, take personal responsibility upon yourself. Like, yes, we want to change the system. Obviously, we want to change the system, but the system's not changing anytime soon. It's changing very slowly. In the meantime, we can alleviate a lot of the suffering that's going on with wealth inequality by encouraging the rich to give all of their surplus, and when I say the rich, I mean upper middle class and above, not just the billionaire class, give all of their surplus to the lower classes in order to try to alleviate this wealth inequality a bit. And a lot of socialists push back against that idea, and they were doing that on my Twitter, but basically saying, no, if we do that, if we insist people take personal responsibility to take care of the poor, that'll make the system change slower. And, like, until the system changes, it doesn't really matter. Nothing's ever going to really change if we change the system. So by pushing for people to be personally responsible and taking care of the poor, that actually makes things change slower, and that's bad. And that's what one of the points this article brought up that I thought was really good. And I totally agree with that. So anyway, that was just my whole position about that. I don't think it was very controversial or unreasonable, but I did take a lot of pushback from a lot of people about that, and I will be talking to some of them, like I said earlier, the Serfs and American Johnson. I think that's his name. What a name, American Johnson. I wish that was my fucking name. But about this, and I'm sure they'll come here and own me about my misrepresentations of Breadtube. Looking forward to that.